the principle of light and darkness, when the palace nurtures the cavern. When we discuss the art of governance and the nature of power, dreamers often delude themselves with the belief that world order is maintained purely through strict laws and radiant thrones. However, any leader who understands the naked reality and the mechanics of human behavior holds a cold truth. Great power never exists as a single, transparent machine. It always operates under two parallel and opposing entities. On one side is the light of order, where officials clad in magnificent robes sit majestically in court to sermonize on justice before the public. On the other side is the darkness of controlled chaos, where outlaws, bandits, and scoundrels are quietly nurtured to carry out the darkest of ambitions. In ancient times, as in the present, the core idea of those who hold privilege remains unchanged. To execute immoral machinations, the elite never dirty their own hands. They transform the administrative system into a sturdy, imposing surface structure, while secretly using resources to cultivate crime as an effective submerged component. This underground force specializes in shouldering tasks that an official title absolutely forbids a ruler from performing publicly. The purpose of this analysis is not to glorify devious schemes or to guide anyone on how to trample upon their fellow human beings. On the contrary, it is a profound political anatomy aimed at stripping bare the tricks, the logical traps, and the most sophisticated manipulative tactics that the elite often deploy. Only when ordinary people understand the root causes of organized evil can they sharpen their vision to identify, avoid, and protect their legitimate rights against these macro dramas. To grasp the source of this strategy, we must delve into the core weakness of crowd psychology. The nature of the crowd is ignorance. They are easily dazzled by flashy symbols and always yearn for a saintly, moral model of leadership. Those in power understand this to the ultimate degree. They know that if they were to personally seize the assets of a rival clan, tear up social contracts, or threaten dissidents, they would personally strip away their own veneer of legitimacy. The fire of public indignation would quickly incinerate the throne if the ruler lost their benevolent image. From that pragmatic calculation, the art of governance gave birth to an extremely sophisticated concept called plausible deniability. Plausible deniability is the strategy of establishing a safe distance, an unprovable firewall, between the will of the one giving the order and the actual brutal act. When the ruling class wishes to execute a ruthless plot, they absolutely do not deploy soldiers in uniform. Using regular forces would leave a clear trail of tyranny. Instead, they seek tools from the very bottom of society. They tolerate, provide covert resources to, and protect criminal gangs and professional highwaymen. These individuals bear the title of social dregs, operating independently and appearing to follow only personal greed. But in reality, they are working under the invisible patronage of those sitting on high. When a band of robbers attacks the home of someone obstructing power, the crowd only sees a tragedy caused by poor security. They never imagine the hidden hand of the director. The ruler will then step out slowly, feigning sorrow for the victim's pain, while the spoils have actually been neatly divided in the shadows. This operation is based on an implicit law governing every nation, the tight symbiosis between the magnificent palace and the dark cavern. Many naive commoners often wonder why bands of outlaws can run rampant year after year, setting up camp right on vital trade routes and extorting so much wealth from honest folk, while the imperial army always appears slow and helpless. The crowd often blames the incompetence of the government system or the treacherous terrain. That is entirely a sweet illusion prepared for their minds. A bandit cannot naturally exist, flourish, and flaunt their influence without the turning of a blind eye, or even the direct complicity of those holding power. Outwardly, officials and bandits are two irreconcilable enemies, like water and fire. But in the corners where no one suspects, they are two perfectly meshing gears of a power machine. Officials provide the bandits with precious intelligence regarding vital shipments and moments of weakened defense, while ensuring that patrols will always go off course. In return, the bandits remit the majority of their plunder into the secret treasuries of the dignitaries. More importantly, they take on the role of deterrence, punishing individuals who dare to resist without the leadership ever needing to bring them to court or issue an indictment. The transfer of assets in the shadows is also an art worthy of dissection. When those in power use underground tools, the goal does not stop at sowing deterrence, but also involves the infinite accumulation of wealth. Ruling powers understand that public taxation always hits the limit of endurance and the boundaries of the law. If those limits are exceeded, indignation will explode into riots. Therefore, the bandits act as invisible tax collectors. Through lawless violence, they exploit the assets of the merchant and peasant classes, creating a massive underground economic flow. Eventually, through discreet profit-sharing agreements, the bulk of this tragedy-stained wealth flows back into the pockets of the elite. The crowd is exploited to the bone, but cannot direct their fury at the throne, because the one directly dispossessing them wears the face of a common thug, not an official clad in silk. This is the most perfect political alchemy, transforming blatant exploitation into a sustainable financial source to maintain the power system. We can envision this relationship through the image of a cunning hunter and his forest. The ruler keeps the royal hound in a magnificent cage so the people may praise the composure and orderliness of his governance. But in the dead of night, he surreptitiously releases a pack of wild wolves into the forest bordering the village. The crowd, terrified by the devastation of the wolves, nestles even further into the shade of the royal hound's cage. They are willing to tribute every piece of property they own to beg the hunter to grant them protection. That is the pinnacle of the art of manipulation, turning victims into submissive sheep who voluntarily offer their wool in exchange for a false sense of security. The most horrific psychological trap that privileged powers set does not lie in a shining sword, but in the ability to control the perception of the masses. The most sophisticated tactic of the ruling class is to actively create a crisis, pushing the people to the brink of panic, and then gloriously stepping into the light to play the role of the savior. When a land proves stubborn, refusing to pay taxes or submit to new laws, the government will loosen the shackles on the most aggressive bandit groups. They are given free rein to sweep through, strip away livelihoods, and sow extreme terror upon the villages. Peaceful life is strangled, giving way to a suffocating atmosphere. The crowd then falls into a state of paralysis. In the surrounding desperation, frivolous ideals of freedom, rights, and resistance completely dissipate. The only thing the human mind craves at that moment is survival to cling to. At the exact moment, the crowd collapses completely and kneels to beg for the court's intervention. The ruler begins to play his decisive card. The government system dons its radiant battle armor and deploys its most elite forces to quell the chaos. With overwhelming power, and having already grasped every weakness of their henchmen beforehand, the army quickly purges the evil. The people, in the intoxication of liberation, will hail the ruler as a god descended to earth. They will never realize that the very hand that just pulled them from the abyss was the same hand that coldly pushed them down before. Through this ruthless drama of manipulation, the ruler not only completely breaks the initial will to resist, but also harvests absolute worship. The crowd will now happily accept any harsh conditions of rule and voluntarily pay countless additional fees to maintain the armed forces to prevent a recurrence of the disaster. With a single stratagem, the throne has achieved numerous practical goals. To fully understand the coldness of power, one cannot overlook an inevitable step in this sequence of actions, the art of discarding tools and purging henchmen. Any henchman or bandit group is merely a temporary means, and every means has a harsh expiration date. A ruler with pragmatic wisdom never allows those who know too many of their dirty secrets to exist long enough to become a reverse threat. When the bandits have excellently completed their mission of destruction, or when they begin to grow arrogant, deluding themselves into thinking they possess real power and demanding more than the original agreement, that is when they are stripped of their right to exist. Punishing the most effective henchman brings enormous dual benefits to the ruler. First, it turns the secret holders into eternal, silent shadows, completely eliminating the risk of information leaks.